Hey everybody, it's your good old pal EmptyHero, and today, because it's been almost a month since the last time I reviewed an incomprehensible clusterfuck of a Japanese horror game, we're going to pinch our collective noses and dive face first into the metaphorical steaming hot ocean of fermented asparagus pits that is Clock Tower 3. In this highly sophisticated thought simulator, players will aimlessly wander such iconic locations as the streets of London, a local community theater that's about as empty as the one down the street from my house after they employed a highly progressive group of differently abled thespians to adapt Cats, but wound up scaring all their viewers away after their dyslexic director called them to produce scat instead. Some sort of industrial water treatment facility that is near completely devoid of water due to the insurmountable laziness of the developers, an impossible hospital that's more like a hostel, and the most horrific, spine-chilling castle since that bouncy one in Michael Jackson's backyard where the children were required to remove more than just their shoes if they wanted to bounce around with the king of poppin' cherries and dingleberries. At the outset of our 7-hour-long descent into the mind of an incompetent scenario writer, a letter arrives for Alyssa at the boarding school where she's been left to rot like a jack-o'-lantern following Halloween. Apparently, the text was written in large font with simple, single-syllable words because our short bus schoolgirl was able to tear herself away from stomping on stray cats and ruining every couch she's ever sat on by unwittingly free-bleeding all over the fucking place long enough to read it. In the letter, Alyssa's mother warned that her unwanted burden's life is in danger and to hide until the day following her 15th birthday, specifically forbidding her to come home because frankly, she's tired of boiling the chair cushions. Having read this dire warning, our consumer of boogers and pennies alike comes to the only logical conclusion her disease-addled mind can conjure: to return home immediately without informing an adult, acquiring a weapon, or at the very least, contacting the authorities. At this point, the player is assaulted with an Eldritchian combination of horrific Old English voices so grimy and limey that you can literally hear their teeth tangling up with each Liverpudlian word they eviscerate. What? Our protagonist's uncanny ability to predict doors suddenly bursting open, an egg-headed W.C. Fields impersonator who informs Alyssa that he's just murdered her mother and literally intends to kill Alyssa too. Then instead of running out of the house and calling the police, like so many of my own victims attempt to do before the hounds catch up to them, she follows him upstairs. At this juncture, I would like to point out that the entire gambit of our brilliant mastermind would have fallen apart if Alyssa missed a bus on the way home, never read the letter from her mother, ran out of the house after encountering the lodger, fell into a ditch while trying to bite her own ear, looked up during a rainstorm and drowned, or spackled her pussy shut with cat turds as she was occasionally known to do from time to time. After discovering a statue that bleeds more often than Alyssa's mother, after having her tard-making tubes tied, a spooky piano suddenly draws our Angus Young cosplaying slut into the past, long before her mother poisoned her in the womb by huffing jenkem directly out of her grandfather's gritty bung hole. Though, from the amount of explosions on the English streets, I can fully understand why some players misconstrue this version of World War I London with a modern-day Muslim cultural exchange. Therein, players will infiltrate the secret waifu depository of a tailor shop in order to better witness the murder of the world's smallest pianist, since mine, that one time I got stuck in a Slurpee machine, by a misunderstood gentleman who just wanted to get hammered with a young girl. In the chase that ensues, players learn that when Alyssa's panic meter fills in conjunction with my own manic Peter, the game's camera creates more Dutch angles than an IHOP structural engineer. Alyssa herself runs like a one-legged ostrich trying to hold in a butt plug, and that she can only regain her composure by hiding in a closet like literally any man who takes up youth ministry. Or by literally chugging bubble bath mix like my wife did when she mysteriously drowned in the bathtub after accidentally stumbling upon my secret basement, allegedly. After enduring perhaps the worst boss fight mechanics ever implemented in a 3D game, wherein players shoot arrows of light to bind enemies long enough to launch a 360 no-scope headshot right up the booty hole. Then utilize a pocket watch to help the pigtailed thought realize that instead of Frederick Chopin's Fantasy Impromptu, she should have been learning to play Stairway to Heaven all along. Having successfully completed this week's episode of Quantum Leap, Alyssa is then unceremoniously shat back into her house, wherein she encounters a ginger horn dog who treats players to a motion capture so spasmodic that I can only assume that the director attended the Jar Jar Binks School of Acting as he flops on her bed like a paraplegic being gang raped on a trampoline. Then, despite finding a corpse in her bathtub, Alyssa neglects to take the basic precautions of calling the police, or at the very least, shitting in the bathtub in order to fuck with the coroner when they eventually arrive. Our hockey-haired heroine is then informed of some blitheringly stupid subplot pertaining to serial killers who are reincarnated throughout time and can only be destroyed by female members of her own family, but only while they are teenagers, because after that, their entities begin to sag, their period blood thickens beyond the ideal viscosity, and they lose the favor of a goddess or something equally as moronic. I'm not really sure, and I don't think the developers were either. In the next level, players will face the existential crisis of realizing that this universe's god is such an insufferable cocksucker that he'd allow souls to wander for all eternity in torment just because no one had come along to put a teddy bear in their trunk, thereby sending them to heaven yet. A heartwarming moment between a feeble mother and her absolute loser of a son who's way too old to not have moved out yet, is interrupted by a mustache-twirling cartoon character spraying the son in the face with highly concentrated sour milk farts, then dumping the elderly woman into a vat of acid that she stored in her shed for no justifiable reason, thereby creating the world's worst pot of grandma's soup since my own grandmother went senile and boiled her colostomy bag. After enduring the second worst kind of butt pound one can take from a man, performing a shocker without getting poop on her pinky, then suffering another round of the digitized fecophilia that is this game's boss fights, Alyssa ships the supporting cast off to heaven while simultaneously empowering them to see why children love Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Alyssa's house then explodes, but not really, to generate the eponymous clock tower because the developers realized at the last possible second that they forgot to include one up to that point. The fat fuck from the introduction then boasts that it is a dark realm where I rule and get free refills of my fountain soda with a cup that I brought from home without needing to bring a coupon because Terry at the register knows me. He then plots to merge with Alyssa on her 15th birthday because, like most men of refined taste, he has extremely specific fetishes. One day after that expiration date, and Alyssa might as well be a saggy old granny slathered in pig shit. Alyssa then circumnavigates some kind of industrial area while being chased by a bargain bin Kratos clone who uses a completely different kind of Axe body spray, relives the moment that her father realized that Grandfather Dick was simply too hard to beat, and is teleported mid-boss fight to a pointless filler area which I won't even dignify with a joke. Seriously, how fucking dare Capcom make me think that I've been generously spared completing another mindless boss fight, only to make me pick it back up 20 minutes later? That's some fucked up shit, Capcom! Not cool! In the following area, most players will find, well, to be perfectly honest, most players will have given up on Clock Tower 3 by this point, but those who remain will embark on an epic 5-second long escort mission to find the ginger kid's tasty nurse sister, who turns out to be a Kefka twin in disguise. This red rubber ball clitted slut and her brother, the Harlequin Cletus, break the local British knife ordinances by carrying the two halves of a gigantic pair of scissors, thereby ensuring that every remaining player will lose what little faith they had left in this shit heap. And because the level designers ran out of glue to sniff, the player is suddenly transported to a castle completely out of fucking nowhere. Therein, the player will realize that the twins are actually Jewish and that Alyssa must never be forgiven for exterminating 6 gorillion of them, just because they wanted Dennis to recreate the pit and the pendulum with the shit on his frenulum. A quest for event flags so obtuse that I wasted an hour and a half of my dwindling life unaware that I was supposed to click on a random candelabra will then ensue, which will suddenly prepare the player for the absolute ascension to Buddhahood through patience required for the final boss that follows. Alyssa's grandpa then reveals how he wants to fuse with Alyssa and live forever because he's down low into Futanari and wants to be a little girl with droopy old man balls. Thanks to the limited movement while aiming, the mismatch in the player's speed versus the enemies, and the complete ass fuck of a camera that prevents the player from seeing the boss half of the time, this fight can drag on for hours. Overall, while Clock Tower 3 is a complete turd of a game, it's an unintentionally hilarious turd of a game that every fan of Japanese horror should suffer through just one time. In a way, it's the video game equivalent of fucking the local homeless lady in exchange for a pack of cigarettes, but without having to hold the game down and force the packs of cigarettes into his trembling hands afterwards. Well, that's it for today's video. If you liked it, you could be a succulent savant and use the links provided in the description of this video to join my Discord, so you too can receive alerts for when I upload videos, since YouTube usually won't tell you. Follow my second streaming channels, EmptyHero Streams, on both YouTube and Twitch. Toss a buck at me on Patreon, so you can vote on which subject or game I'll take on next. Check out one of my original ebooks, paperbacks, and audiobooks on Amazon, or you can do none of those things and go fuck your mother in the ass instead. Until then, thanks for your time and goodbye!